Welcome to all of you in this video. As you all know that in the previous video we already have seen that what are the provisions of the constitution which are amended by the simple majority. So in today's video we will see that what are the provisions of the constitution which are amended by the special majority and what are the provisions of the constitution which are amended by the special majority and by the consent of state legislatures of half of the states. So let's start. So before knowing about the provisions which are amended by a special majority, we have to know what special majority is. So let's see the definition of the special majority. Special majority. So special majority is nothing but it is the combination of two types of majorities. The first one is the majority of the total strength the majority of total strength, or we can also say the membership of a house plus another majority which is two-third majority of the people present and voting. So as I already have said that the special majority is nothing but it is combination of two types of majorities. Okay, the first majority is the majority of the total strength or membership of a house, and the second type of majority is the two-third majority of those people who are present and voting. So the combination of majority of the total strength of a house and two-third majority of the present and voting is called the special majority. And as far as the provisions are concerned, there are only two provisions. There are only two provisions of the Constitution which are tampered with or changed or amended by the special majority. The first one is the fundamental rights. Fundamental rights. And the second one is the directive principles of the state policy. So these are the two provisions which are amended by using the special majority. That means whenever we have to make any changes or amendment in the fundamental rights, the parliament will adopt the way of special majority. And similarly, if any changes to be made in the directive principle of state policy, again the parliament will resort to the special majority. So whenever a bill has to be passed by the special majority, okay, those bills will be concerning either the fundamental rights or the directive principles of the state policy. Now these are the two provisions which are amended by the special majority. Now let's see what are those provisions which are amended by the special majority as well as the consent of state legislatures of half of the states. Let's start. So basically there are seven. Okay, the first one is the election of the president and its manner. So whenever any amendment will have to be made in the election of the president or its manners. Okay, what kind of majority will be resorted? Okay, it will be the special majority and consent of a state legislature of half of the states. So, the first provision which is amended using the special majority and consent of the state legislature of half of the states is the election of the president and its manner. Now, second is the extent of the executive power of the center and the states. Similarly, whenever any change has to be done regarding the extent of executive power either of the center or of the states, it will be done by special majority as well as the consent of state legislature of half of the states. Okay. The third provision is the provisions regarding the Supreme Court and high courts. The fourth one is the distribution of legislative powers between the union and the states. And we always know that whenever we talk about the distribution of legislative powers, we are talking about three lists in the Seventh Schedule. Okay, that is the union list, the state list, and the concurrent list. Okay, so what is the union list? Union list is a list which contains the subjects on which the center can make laws. If we talk about the state list, this list contains all those subjects where the states can make laws, and the concurrent list contains those subjects where both can make laws. So whenever any changes will be made in these lists, these changes will be made by the special majority as well as the consent of state legislature of half of the states. Now, I am continuously repeating the consent of state legislature of half of the states. Okay, it is just a formality, and this consent has to be obtained by simple majority. Not very tough, and even if they do not give consent, it doesn't matter at all. So the consent by the state is just a formality, because these provisions have something to do with the federal structure. That is why this formality has been kept in place. Okay, the next one is about goods and services tax council. So whenever any change has to be made in the GST council, again it will be made by the special majority and the consent of the state legislature of half of the states. Now, the sixth one is representation of states in parliament. Okay, so when I say representation of states in the parliament, I am talking about the number of seats the states have been allotted in the Rajya Sabha. So whenever there any change has to be made in the allotment of seats in the Rajya Sabha to the states. Okay, those changes, those amendments will be made by the special majority and the consent of the state legislature of half of the states. Okay, and the seventh one is actually the power of the parliament to amend the constitution and its procedure. Okay, so the power of parliament to amend the constitution and how it will do so. Okay, it is again amended, or it can be again amended by the special majority as well as the consent of state legislature of half of the states. So basically those provisions which have something to do with the federal structure, okay, actually those are amended by this method, means by special majority and by the consent of state legislature of half of the states. And here also I would like to add that consent by the state legislature should be by the simple majority, and even if they do not give any consent or they do not act, it doesn't matter, it's just a formality. So for you guys, I'm reading out the provisions. Okay, so as far as the provisions which are amended by the special majority is concerned, okay, there are two: fundamental rights directive principle of state policy. And as far as those provisions are concerned which have some bearing upon the federal structure of the country and which are amended by the special majority and the consent by the state legislature of half of the states, they are as follows. First one is the election of the president and its manners. The second one is extent of the executive power of the center and the states. The third one is Supreme Court and High Courts. The fourth one is distribution of legislative powers between the union and states in terms of three lists: union list, state list, concurrent list. Okay, these lists are there in the 7th schedule. Okay, the fifth one is Goods and Services Tax Council. The sixth one is the representation of states in the parliament, means the seats allotted to the states in the Rajya Sabha. And seventh, the power of the parliament to amend the constitution and its procedure. I hope this video was informative for you people. When you are preparing on or reading Lakshmikant for polity, you can just play this video, you can hear my voice repeating all these provisions, and I think this will lessen your period of preparation. Thank you.